So welcome, Jonathan.
Lovely. Thank you for having me, guys, and really appreciate you making the time. So a little bit of background on Access Living Group. So we are essentially an NDIS project manager, designer, builder, and everything in between. So essentially we manage the whole sort of process from start to finish. We've been going for just over 4.5 years now, which is great. We've completed over 300 dwellings. I think we're closer to 350 now, across 3 different states. So I guess, that just gives you a sort of a good assurance that we truly understand the NDIS and what it actually entails. What we've got up on the screen at the moment is just a package that we've put together, but essentially we'll just sort of go through page by page, and I'll give you a bit of background on what we do and how we do it and how we can assist you on your NDIS purchase if you proceed with something. Obviously at the end we can go through some Q&A as well, and if you have any questions we can go through that. So some background on this particular package, which is in Rockbank in Victoria. So we obviously build in Victoria, South Australia and Tasmania. You can see here that we essentially do a house and land package, but it's specifically designed for the purpose of NDIS care. So depending on the category of care that we do, whether it be HPS, high physical support, or whether we do robust and the other subcategories of those as well. So what we do is a full turnkey pack for NDIS purposes. So it truly includes everything that's needed within that home to provide the level of care that is required for the participants that obviously will take space within the dwellings. If you see here on the left, and I'll just walk you through a quick floor plan, you've got a home obviously with a single garage. The garages tend to get used more for storage purposes than actual cars in this particular case. So we try and maximize the size of the home rather than the actual garage itself. We're seeing probably 80–90% of the time they're actually used for material storage, equipment storage, things like spare wheelchairs, or it might be beddings and linen and that type of thing. You've got a carer bedroom in the front there. So every home that we design has space for a carer. They are essentially classified under the SIL category. So SIL, you'll see come up as an acronym quite often. And they will provide the care for the participants within the dwelling. Within the NDIS scheme, participants are sort of referenced as what tenants would be for a traditional property. So when I talk to participants, that's what I'm referring to there. You can see here that every single dwelling has been very specifically designed for the purpose of what it entails. So the carer bedroom in the front there is obviously more of a standard dwelling. It does have a bathroom in there that's designed for the carer themselves. And then you've of course got 2 other bedrooms within this particular design, but we do have a variety of different designs, big and small homes, and designed for different categories. This one is for HPS and it's a hybrid, so it also entails independent living and the FA category as well. So the en-suites to each bedroom are a critical part of what we do. And I guess the reason we do that is it provides a level of privacy for each participant, but it also gives them access. So this home is designed to allow for a 250 kilogram load bearing throughout the house. So somebody can, if required, be picked up from their bed and taken to the bathroom via a hoisting system. This takes immense amounts of pressure off the participant, and it also provides immense amounts of support to the carer. It's a very fine balance when we design these homes that we actually take into account who's using them. It's not just the participants, it's also the carer themselves. So finding a balance between designing what is essentially somebody's workplace, making them feel safe and secure within their workplace as a nurse or carer, and then obviously the participants to make sure they feel homely, safe and secure within what is essentially their home environment. So it's a very mixed issue, and it does take a lot of feedback into account. Our designers, which are in-house, they do focus groups with all the SIL groups and SDA groups on an ongoing basis. We're on version 7 of these plans at the moment, and all of those bits and pieces of feedback have been taken into account to make sure that we design these homes to the very best that they can be, which not only maximizes tenancy, but also maximizes the care of life and the life that our participants and our carers feel within these dwellings. You can see from the front there, from the render, there's multitudes of different renders you can choose from. This is just one of them. They don't look like NDIS housing, and that's very deliberate. They are designed to blend into their environments. Essentially, they are a house on a block of land, which is great. But they obviously have some very hidden features there. You can see the concrete all the way through to the doorway. Does have obviously 0 entryways, so wheelchairs can go into every environment. You can see in the back there, and there's photos that Min and the team can show you afterwards if required, that incorporate all the decking and the ramping systems as well. But instead of doing sort of bolt-on ramps and ugly sort of yellow tape sort of hazards, we tend to integrate them into the home itself, just to make them feel, I hate the word normal, but normal in reference to the home itself. So the home feels and looks like a normal home is probably the only way to really explain that. The ramp that's integrated into the modwood decking in the back there, as an example, could be used for a pram, not just a wheelchair. So it does feel quite natural in its environment as well, which is great. Height adjustable bench tops in this particular dwelling. Obviously, all commercial fit outs and fixtures designed to support that level of care. Battery pack support systems that go into a UPS point in each of the bedrooms. So in the event that power is actually taken out of the home, or there's a power outage or something, those power points actually can support really vital equipment for the participants as well, depending on their high care needs at the time. So this allows them to get the support they need from any form of machinery that might be required to power until power is either restored or a generator can be delivered to site. And that's a really crucial part of what we do. You can see that we've got some really clever features, ovens, dishwashers, everything is included there, and they're all side opening. So it means that somebody can pull, say, a wheelchair right up to the edge of one and load the dishwasher, really just making ease of life a priority within these homes. So every single thing down to the light switch and the zoning through air conditioning and heating has been taken into account. So there's a huge amount of support that goes into these homes. I think another crucial part is that by following a stringent sort of valuation and financing model, the valuers truly understand the cost of these homes. I know that you can see that the package is a little bit higher than a standard dwelling, but we haven't had one property fall short of valuation in over 2 years because the valuers that we use truly understand the NDIS scheme and what actually goes into these homes and what we do build. Within Victoria and South Australia, we've got a 6-month average build time at the moment. We have not had one property go over 6 months, 4 weeks in Victoria, which is fantastic. And we're meeting that metric in Tasmania at the moment too, which is great. South Australia is a little bit longer at about 12 months due to planning at this stage. But you can see there that it does sort of include everything. Look, essentially, we are your project manager all the way through. So we're involved from start to finish. So I'll go through that process a little bit for you, just so you can understand it better. Essentially, we work with a variety of different land developers across the different regions. We analyze the block of land first. So we probably only choose 1 out of every 100 blocks of land that actually come across our desk, because they have to meet a very stringent criteria for us to make sure that they're appropriate for an NDIS home, but also from an area location and a metric location as well. We take into account the demand metrics from our SDA providers. We work with a panel of SDA providers, which is great. We then put together the package. So if it meets all those metrics, it meets the demand that we get from our SDA groups and from the government data, it meets the levels and the expectations that we need. My team sort of roughly mud map a home onto that block of land to make sure that every single thing has been taken into account. We then put together a package. At the point where it's actually picked as a package, the standard process applies between land and build. So you sign a standard build contract and you sign a standard land contract. The only difference that we have in this is that we actually do a compliance certificate for you as well. So we use an independent registered NDIS assessor. They look at a full set of working drawings on that particular block of land, and then we actually produce a stamped certificate that goes into your build contract. This essentially gives you the guarantee of compliance. So as long as that home is built in accordance with the plans, which obviously it has to be, then you've got a guarantee of compliance for the particular category that you've picked. So we do a very we do robust specific designs, and then we of course do HPS hyperschool support designs, which also encompass 2 other categories. So the 2 categories, so the 3 categories, FA, IO, and HPS, acronyms, I know, they essentially can live harmoniously together. And then our robust tenants tend to be more independent. That's a different category. So to break down those categories for you, and I know we've got an HPS plan up on the board at the moment. This one's designed more for physical type impairments. I don't want to, I'm going to generalize a little bit, but I don't want to sort of minimize that there is a huge amount of variety to disability. So we build a home to, I guess, the category that's required, but some modification might need to be done later on. The good news is that's obviously been designed to do so, and that's been paid for, and usually paid for by the NDIS as well, which is great. So robust homes tend to be built in a different way. They're built robustly, I guess, is the where that term comes from. You know, no plasterboard on the walls, reinforced hinge points, you know, laminated strengthened glass throughout, and different sort of walling systems and vanity systems. This essentially means that they're sort of heavy use homes. So if you were to punch a wall or, you know, potentially run up against a window or something along those lines, those homes are designed to withstand that pressure. Which tends to be more of the mental illness category, and obviously the multitude of disability within that. And then obviously the HPS homes tend to be more of a physical impairment, so designed for more wheelchair access and the likes. Obviously it goes into a huge array of disability, but that sort of gives you an idea. So they tend to be designed very specifically for those categories and zoned for those particular categories. When we put together those packages and then we start construction, we're obviously there throughout that process as well. So we work very closely with the builders that we work with. We only work with 1 builder per state, and they truly are partners of ours. So we don't just outsource that work. We've got teams within those organisations that actually build these homes in conjunction with our very stringent specifications. And then we do checks all the way through construction as well to make sure that these homes actually stay compliant all the way through. And then you get a compliance certificate at the end as well, saying that the home is compliant, and then we register the home within the NDIS. We also, probably the biggest difference between us and a lot of other groups, we also have a placement team on hand. So my placement team are there to essentially guide you through the process of SDA groups. So the SDA group is essentially your property manager that's specifically for the NDIS itself. So they're sort of like, you know, when you buy a traditional home, you might go to Ray White or Colliers or Marshall White or, you know, a traditional real estate agent to manage that home for you. The SDA manager or the SDA group that you select is essentially that role within this. It's a lot more complex than just leasing out a property. They tend to work very closely with the participants and the SIL groups. They have to register those participants on care plans and make sure the home fits within those care plans. And they have to do a lot of legwork in comparison to finding participants, but also making sure that those participants fit within that home category as well and are registered on the appropriate care plan. So there's a huge amount of work that goes into I guess, putting someone within a home. The demand metrics are really high, but actually getting them into a home is a huge amount of legwork. And we noticed that without having that placement team, that process really does fall by the wayside. We work very differently as well in a great way where we actually have full independence and we work with a huge variety of SDA groups. This maximizes your tenancy because it means you're not locked in with one person. And if they underperform, there's no other option there, which is pretty much how most groups work. We give you the choice to select the SDA group that you want to work with. And we guide you through that process. We don't profit from the tenancy of these homes, which is another really big plus. It means we can give you genuine advice. Because we're not getting paid or getting kickbacks or anything silly like that. And my team can give you genuine advice who you should go with and give you that support to, you know, ask the right questions on your behalf, get offers on your homes on your behalf as an example is a big part of what we do. Presenting those offers to you, explaining those offers and working you through that. So I guess we're really there through a pretty complex journey and we simplify that right down to what is essentially house and land package, and we take those 1,000 steps, in between that off your hands and take care of them for you. So it's a very proven process. Min and the team have done a great job at working with us on that as well. And like I said, we've completed well over 300, I think 300 plus of these dwellings so far. And every single one has complied. Every single one has met its metrics, and every single one has a strong tenancy and support program in place as well, which is fantastic. So I guess that's probably a bit of a nutshell of the information of what we do. And I can see a heap of questions there, so I might just log into the Q&A box, guys, and I'll just answer what I can. The first question I've got from Bradley there, what can, they keep popping up. Is the SDA provider working in investors' interest? The short answer is absolutely. So the SDA groups essentially work for you. They're your property manager. They only get paid when there's tenants within the home. So you don't pay them anything unless there's actually a tenant within the home, or a participant, sorry, I should reference as. So if there's no participant, then there's no income for them. So the incentive for them to make sure that the home is as full as possible is really there for them. So if they have, 2 or 3 participants within a home, their profitability on that particular dwelling goes up 2 or 3 times. So there's a big incentive interest for them to make sure that they have your best interest at heart. We only work with reputable SDA groups. I think that's the other one. There's a lot of spruikers out there that we actually don't work with, and we don't work with deliberately, mainly because we just don't know them or trust them, or we know that they're doing the wrong thing. The benefit for being completely independent is we can guide you in the right direction with groups that we know are performing well. We know their rates. We know how they deal with our particular investors, and we trust them, which is great. I guess the biggest question that's coming up in most of this is vacancy. And it's a question that I get asked every single day. Will I get tenants? What is the current vacancy rate within Victoria? Those types of things. All I can say to that, guys, is 2 things. Number one, do your own research, 100%. There's a huge amount of information out there. Just make sure it's coming from reputable sources. Use the NDIS website itself. There's actually some really great tools through the Department of Social Services. So if you type NDIS demand map into Google, I think that'll come up with a good link there. Select the suburbs that you're looking at leasing these homes out. They've got data that goes out to 2025 on demand metrics. The good news about that is actually government data, so it's not something that can be skewed, so they can give you a really good test there of what to look at. What I urge you to do when you do that is select postcodes in the area as well. A good example of that is we had one suburb yesterday where we had really high demand in our books, but a client went to the panel and it only had, I think, 600 participants looking in that area. But then they clicked on the suburb next door, the postcode next door, which is a 2.5-minute drive, and they had 2,000 people. So I think it's really crucial to understand that people will move within a 20-minute radius. So make sure you're selecting a 20-minute radius of those locations as well when you're doing that research. I guess the demand metrics speak for themselves. There is a huge amount of demand. Not to be said that there's still a lot of work to get them into the home just based on funding and care plans and all of the work that your SDA provider does for you in conjunction with the SIL provider. But tenancy is something that is still very, very strong that we're seeing at the moment with the data that we get from our SDA groups. Of course, do your own research, and I urge you to, but we're seeing really strong metrics at the moment and very, very low vacancy rates with our particular dwellings. I guess there's 2 things when it comes to vacancy that I want to talk to you guys about as well. Is just because you build a home doesn't mean it's going to get a tenant. You can build the wrong home, and you can build the wrong design, and you can work with the wrong groups in the right areas. So what that means is you can build a home that looks like a hospital, and you can build it cheaply, and you can build it to compliance, but nobody wants to live in something that is built poorly or built just for purpose. Nobody wants to live in a hospital, basically. I wouldn't, and I'm sure none of you would either. So I think it's crucial to make sure that you work with someone like us, and there's some other great groups out there too, of course, and Min and the team are fantastic and work alongside us in that regard, to make sure that you're building a home that is not only just compliant, but also beautiful, and also something that takes their care of life into account here. Got to remember that we spend about 60% of our lives in our house. A lot of our participants spend 90, 95, even 100% of their time within their dwelling. So these homes really do have to feel like homes, and I think it's really crucial to make sure that we make them feel that way The guys have walkthrough videos of all of our dwellings and our specifications. I think what you'll notice that these have been built not just for, I guess, serviceability, but also taking into account that factor as well. We do, another question that came up, do you build both hybrid and robust properties? Answer is yes. So we have about 6 or 7 different designs. They're built for different categories. So we've got robust properties, we've got hybrid properties that are both robust and HPS, although they're not completely fit for purpose for robust entirely, as in they certify, but their designs are not quite right for robust, if that makes sense. Well, we've got some very specific robust design properties. And then also our hybrid match a couple of other different categories as well. As an example, you can have an HPS tenant and an FA tenant living together, and the rates are not dissimilar, which is great. We had one offer just recently to a client that was actually for 2 FA tenants on a property that paid out $160,000 a year. So they didn't even bother getting an HPS tenant in there because they had 2 FAs, which paid out substantially. Taking into account fees, that paid out at 10.71% in its first year after fees, and it paid out, I think, don't quote me exactly, but it was 11.5% plus in the second year. Which is great. So, we've got case studies on properties that are leased out from as early as last week that we can go through with you just to give you that confidence too. South Australia does have a current undersupply that we can see based on the data. And we do build obviously very similar dwellings there. As you can see, it's a slightly sort of different home as far as the block size, but you can see very similar designs, which is great. So you can see there's a price point difference because the land is a little bit cheaper in this particular suburb, but taking into account the Virginia metrics and the areas right around to Salisbury as well, we're seeing strong demand still through the Department of Social Services data plus our SDA groups as well. So very similar to what I spoke to last time, guys, is we only sort of look at areas where we do have demand data, which is great. We take into, as much as we aren't the SDA provider, we do take into account all of the data that you can access, and the team that you're working with, will be able to help you analyze that and work out the right locations for you as well. South Australia really is a truly fantastic spot to build. There's not many people doing it there either. That's probably a crucial thing. So I would say we are one of the biggest providers there, and definitely probably the most advanced as far as building the right types of homes in the right areas, that really attract strong tenancy. And I guess our relationships there are big. We also do have a placement team on site in South Australia as well. So our office is primarily based in Victoria, but we do actually have full-time team members within South Australia as well, already on the ground, working very hard on the placements of these particular dwellings too. So very advanced there, and truly great product. This is an HPS as well. I think that the demand sort of speaks for itself. As you can see, slight variance in the facade there as well. But again, you have a choice of different facades across all of our packages. I guess what we've got here is, let me just get my head around this particular floor plan. Okay, great. So this is a slightly different dwelling type, as you can see, but still fundamentally based on the same sort of metrics as what we spoke about before. So you've still got obviously a carer's bedroom in the front there. You've got the laundry, you've got the living and the dining, and then you've got an ensuite for each of those bedrooms as well, plus an alfresco. You can see that the render here is obviously a double garage, but obviously it'd be a single car garage version of this home. So you just chop that down a little bit. It's a 3 bedroom, so that means it has 2 tenantable participant-based bedrooms, and then you've got 1 carer in the front there. So you get essentially income on the participant bedrooms, not on the carer bedrooms. The carer obviously uses that bedroom like an office, usually on shifts and rotation as well, with multiple carers. Very similar to what I spoke about before, this particular dwelling is an HPS hybrid. So obviously it includes everything within the home itself, reinforced walls, full turnkey UPS systems, blinds, air conditioning throughout. Each bedroom has zoned air conditioning units, plus the lounge room. you know, and a variety of other things. There's about 200 different things in the spec list that also forms part of our packages. So when you do get a package, this 2-page spreadsheet is within that, but there are about 30 or 40 pages which the guys have access to really truly walk you through all of the information within the homes. Tasmania as a marketplace is fantastic. Number one, we're a very early adopter there. Min and the team were, with us over 12 months ago, exploring the Hobart area. And I think we're all going, okay, well, is there demand here? And what we found was that there was just nobody doing it properly, or at all for that matter, I think, Min, which is interesting. And we sort of dived in there and went, well, we can really contribute and help build some fantastic dwellings for the community that needs them, which is great. So we still remain one of the only groups there, and one of the groups really truly doing the right thing and building the homes to meet this huge amount of demand that we're seeing currently within Hobart, which is excellent. We work with obviously a huge amount of lenders that really understand, number one, the NDIS, but also access living groups, homes themselves. We work with a variety of different lenders to educate themselves and design products around it. Getting still very similar LVRs, 80-85% LVRs we see come through, normal interest rates. We're not seeing anything crazy there. And then the other one is the valuers. So if you go through a traditional lender, they just put it through the VALEX system, and then somebody just values it as a house and land package, and they don't actually take into account the requirement that has to go into these homes as far as the build. And it's a huge amount of difference between building one of these homes and something standard. The margins are actually about the same. So it's not like any builders really profiteering on these. They sort of do the same margins on these as a standard house and land package. So the valuers that have really spent the time with us to learn how this works, value the product accordingly. So by following that process, you won't have val risk. It hasn't happened in over 2 years for us. So it's not something to be concerned about as long as you follow a stringent process of choosing the right people that have taken the time to learn the product itself.
Jonathan, one of the questions people ask is the time frame for approvals with council. What's your experience with council approvals?
Depending on the state, Victoria is probably our most efficient. Realistically, if you settle on a block of land with me today, you'll have a house in 6 months in Victoria. And there's no headaches ever. There's never delays. I've never seen any delays. It's all private certification, which is great. And our building partner, Luxton Homes, just do a phenomenal job on these particular homes with us. And they've got a really, really, strong pipeline of trades and support there to make sure that that's the case. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks longer in Tasmania. But still a 6-month build time on top of that 4 to 6 weeks, which is really, really fantastic as well. And then a little bit longer in South Australia, where we've got about a 4-month average time frame for them to get through council. And then obviously the build starts from there on. So a little bit longer there, but again, still very much within a normal time frame for a dwelling. I guess it's really up to you in that regard, but all three are pretty fine. As far as council approvals, we don't see any issue there. It's all private certification generally.
Another question from Adrian is, do the doors come with heavy duty locks?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, again, urge you to look at the photos and the spec list, guys, but every single piece of hardware in these homes is very specific. And that's a really good question, Adrian, because, that adds a huge amount of cost just compared to a builder's range, $20 door handle that would normally be the case. All commercial door handles, you've got very specific light switches that are oversized for sensory issues, special grip tiling, zero lot entryways, 250 kilogram load bearing throughout the home with hoisting points. Everything is special in these homes, and everything has been designed to make sure that they not only comply, but actually exceed that as well. Adjustable height bench tops cut into the stone. I could go on and on into what's actually within these dwellings. That's different. And commercial heavy duty door handles is one of those. Absolutely.
There's a lady called Adriana. She's asking, there are many packages advertised for Murray Bridge in Adelaide, but there's not much demand showing online for the area. Any comments?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's two things there. Number one, it depends where you get your data. There's lots of different places where we get data. But then first and foremost, we also look at where our SDA providers actually have people as well. So, we don't just rely purely on the data. We also get a lot of information from our SDA groups on where they have people waiting to. So, but again, always do your research. If that's something you're concerned about, go with an area that you feel comfortable with, of course. Yeah.
There's a question from Harry. Can Jonathan touch on what the risks are to the investor, please?
I guess like any other sort of house, you've got, you are investing in something. So, definitely do, speak to a financial planner, speak to your lawyers, 100%. We want you to be completely educated on that and get genuine advice. Of course, I can't talk to giving you financial advice. We're not financial advisors and that type of thing. We sort of just, we build a really fantastic SDA house. That's what we do. But I guess the risk that, I guess I face as an investor potentially on these products is like anything else, the demand, the price, finance, the NDI scheme itself. I mean, I think it's quite low risk because it's gone through both governments and it's got a 20-year plus pipeline, so there doesn't seem to be any issues there. But I think the risks associated to this investment are just the same as any other house or apartment that you would invest in. It's the same risk profile, just with the government as your tenant, essentially, or paying those bills.
There's a question from Mark. He asks, how do you mean by correct valuer? Most standard and second-tier lenders use the VALAC system. VALAC is a randomly selected process. I'm confused as to what you mean by choosing the correct valuer.
Commercial valuer. Use a commercial valuer. It's a residential product type, generally speaking. I mean, it can be classed as a class 2 dwelling or 3 if you want it to, but use a commercial valuer that spent the time with us, really. You don't have to. You can go with a lower value where you just get a lower LVR. There's no right or wrong there as well. You can go through the VALAC system. I guess the luck that we've had is not luck. A lot of the commercial valuers spend time with us and we help them build their model and they understand the data. So ultimately it's up to you. We're not in finance. We can't give you advice around that. But I know that we've seen stronger success through the commercial valuers on that type of thing. But again, it's up to you ultimately and definitely talk to your financial planner.
Another question is from Conwell is, how much time does it take to have the NDIS house fully tenanted in your experience?
Varies a lot. Realistically, last week we had a home that was tenanted a month before it was even finished. Another one just recently, I think it took about 30 days to get the first person in and they're currently working on the second. So I think it really does vary a lot. It's a bit of luck of the draw a little bit. It's not necessarily about demand. The demand's quite high and we're seeing strong demand. It's about how fast they can move. The SDA providers and the SIL providers don't move quickly. And I think we all know that the government doesn't tend to move that quickly either. So it depends on how quickly people's care plans can be registered. So they might be ready to go, but they're waiting on care plans to be registered and all of the paperwork lodged. What we find is that the minimum time frame, and I think this is the easiest thing to measure, is that you can't really do anything for the first 30 days. It does take 30 days for the home to be registered. So you definitely won't be paid in that time. But tenancy does take a little bit of time, and we say allow a bit of time there. I'll read on the sheet. I think Merrick, one of our placement managers from one of the SDA groups. So the best thing to allow for is between 30 and 60 days for your first person, sometimes 2, and sort of run on that metric as a worst case scenario. But again, ultimately it can be quicker than that, it can be slower than that as well. By the time they're registered, I mean, it just takes a bit of time to get them registered.
A question from Ben is, obviously in Victoria, it's a higher population, hence more people in the pool who want a house, but also more homes available. Would it be better to build in Tassie or SA where there are less opportunities for tenants? Also, does it change much from sector?
A bit of a muchness, really. And I think that's really personal to you on where you want to invest in. I think that all 3 regions have their pros and cons. Tassie's a smaller market, but obviously, big, strong demand metrics there. Victoria, although there's more homes, there's also a lot more people too. The population in Tassie, I think, sub 600,000. The population in Victoria is closing around 5 million, could be more than that. So I think it's sort of relative to the marketplace.
Whose responsibility is it to mow the lawns? If there are repairs to be done, who bears the cost?
Yeah, good question. Look, fundamentally speaking, there are registered NDIS providers that provide lawn care and that type of thing that quite often falls under SIL funding. I think the exact term is that in the event that the participant is unable to maintain things like gardens, then they obviously will be able to provide or gain access to funding for those lawns and those areas to be maintained. What we find is that a lot of the time these homes are actually better maintained than any standard residential dwelling that you might have. Lawns are taken care of, cleaning's taken care of, the homes are really, really well maintained and looked after, which is great to a high degree. Essentially, you've got, cleaning and lawn services quite often in these homes, which is great. So you're not responsible for the lawn care, essentially, or the gardens or the internal cleaning or anything like that. That's all taken care of, either through the participants themselves, if they're able, with conjunction with the carer, of course, or they do have, obviously, the ability to fund that through their SIL plans if that's the case. So I think it's a complicated question, but essentially it's not something you have to pay for. It just depends on who does it. But most of the time, we generally see that there's funding for that on the participant's care plan to have that stuff taken care of, including things like mowing lawns and that type of thing.
And repairs.
Yeah, damage, I think, is again, it's a question where if there's like a little maintenance-y thing, obviously you've got brand new building warranties on these, which is great through your builder. So if an oven breaks or something like that, it's taken care of. I think we've got 5-year warranties on ovens and dishwashers and things like that, which is great through the brand that they use, which is locally sourced, which is excellent. Minor things, they've got obviously funding for, what do they call it? Like building services. So if there's a little nick in the wall or something needs to be cleaned off or patched, minor things like that are covered. If anything major happens structurally, obviously it's on an owner, just like any other property. If a truss falls down or something like that, or something breaks, I guess that's where it sort of falls into building warranty at that point. But ultimately it's the same as any other residential property. We do get asked a lot about tenanting homes that we don't build. The short answer is definitely not. We have a lot of people that go with homes that are built cheaper. Our margins are very nominal. They're the same as any other builder. It's just that building a cheaper home. The short answer is if they don't tenant with that builder, there's a problem. And generally speaking, we don't love tenanting something that we haven't actually designed very specifically for the location that it's in. So, our team of designers and architects on staff really care about what they do, and they design a product accordingly. So apologies, we can't help with anything that isn't built by us or designed by us.
There is one last question from Sam. Based on the house and land package for SDA homes, do you see an uplift or have any data as a commercial investment to sell setup? So I'm guessing, Sam, you're asking about resale of an SDA home.
Massive. If you want to sell your property, please sell it. We have buyers lined up. You're all asking the same questions, which is great. What is the vacancy rate? Am I going to get tenants? And I think it's that fear that stops a lot of people from investing in the space. And it's more just the fear of the unknown. Sam, if you've got a property that's fully tenanted, I've got organizations that would buy them off you. We work a lot of private, large commercial, publicly listed companies that invest in this space as well. So they really understand the risk metrics, and they buy homes off us constantly to put into their funds, I guess, like super funds and that type of thing, and work with a lot of groups that make this, part of that profile. They would buy a tenanted property overnight for a major uplift.